Good morning, children. Welcome back to the session. We are discussing the English subject for 10th standard. Lesson 5 we are going to discuss today. That is what is moral action, written by M.K. Gandhi. What is moral action? This is the first session we are discussing, children. So before going to discuss about the lesson, let's have note on Mahatma Gandhi ji, that is M.K. Gandhi. Note on the author. Everybody knows, I think, regarding this Mohandas. M.K. means Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. Was born on 1869, died on 1948. So, note about the author. Just to listen, children. So Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, to the millions of Indians, Mahatma Gandhi was the greatest of contemporary Indians and certainly one of the great men of all times. He was the mightiest force in the Indian political scene for nearly half a century and remained the profoundest influence on all areas of public life. His method of non-violence and truth won freedom for India without bloodshed and demonstrated to the modern man how love is more powerful than nuclear bombs. Appropriate to the man's ideals, Gandhiji's life and work are an open book, and therefore mention of the landmarks of his life is mere formality. Gandhiji wrote and spoke tirelessly using his characteristic charm and simplicity, for which his autobiography is the finest example. So it was written by Mahatma Gandhi ji. So as the lesson, it is a question mark. What is moral action? So nowadays we are going to see the people, the life of the people. Some people are not in a perfect way. It is not a moral way. So here in this lesson we are going to discuss the paragraphs which was prescribed here by the author, which is a moral one, which is not a moral one, with so many illustrations and examples, children. So coming to the pre-reading activity, before going to the paragraph, let us recall some of the points of this pre-reading activity. So what is this given? Honesty is the best policy. Honesty is the best policy. Do you agree? Discuss in phase. Definitely. We are sure that honesty is very, very important, and that will be the best policy of a man. See, we are going to respect that particular person with honesty. Honesty gives us respect, isn't it, children? And it is some of the principles you have to follow in your life, and according to the way we are leading our life, according to the way how we are abiding to the some principles, moral principles, that makes our life beautiful, and it was accepted by the others also. So with this, I start the lesson. The first paragraph, children. Open a textbook and observe carefully the paragraphs and lines. Understand what I am going to explain. First paragraph, children. When can it be said that a particular action is moral? So repeat once again. When can it be said that a particular action is moral? In asking this question, the intention is not to contrast moral with immoral actions, but to consider many of our everyday actions against which nothing can be said from the conventional standpoint and which some regard as moral. So most of our actions are probably non-moral. they do not necessarily involve morality. For the most part, we act according to the prevailing conventions. Such conventional behavior is often necessary. If no such rules are observed, anarchy would be the result. What is the meaning of anarchy then? Anarchy means the absence of governmental authority. Anarchy means anarchy. Anarchy means absence of the absence of governmental authority. Governmental authority. Governmental authority. So such a conventional, so for the most part we act according to the prevailing conventions. Such conventional behavior is often necessary. If no such rules are observed, anarchy would be the result. And social intercourse would come to an end. Still, the mere observance of custom and usage cannot properly be called morality. Children, in this first paragraph, it is discussed what is about what is a moral action, what is a non-moral action. So, the difference between moral action and non-moral action, and the same way the intentional act and the conventional act. So, intentional act, conventional act, or conventional behavior, or what we call mechanical act. So, here the author Mahatma Gandhi ji is going to speak about the moral action in this lesson, that is difference between a conventional behavior and a moral behavior. He says that moral act must be our own act which must spring from our own will. Okay, so what is a non-moral action then? When an action is performed mechanically, without a sense of duty, or without a sense of consciousness, or without an intention to do good, is a non-moral action. So non-moral action is called as a mechanical act without any sense. Okay, children, that is here I mentioned. Then the difference between mechanical act and behavioral act. So mechanical action is just like a performance of a machine. It is an action performed without a sense, or without a sense of duty or conscious or moral thought. Here we are not going to expect any moral, that is mechanical act. So moral action, that is an action done with a sense, that is what you call intentional act. With a sense we are going to do action is done, an action is done, if an action is done with a sense of duty and commitment and with a good intention, then it is a moral action, children. So, example for conventional behavior and a moral act, children. Many of our everyday actions that are a part of necessary traditions and customs are termed as conventional acts, or conventional actions or behavior. That is traditions and customs. That is what we are going to follow in our daily life. They are non-moral actions because we perform them whether we like them or not. A moral act is one which is done with a good intention. It may be helping others without expecting any returns. So, this is about the conventional behavior, that is of customs and traditions of the society that we have to follow, whether it is acceptable or not acceptable. We are blindly following, that is what you call conventional behavior. But the moral act, it is the intentional one, we are doing with consciousness. Okay, that is the difference here mentioned in the first paragraph. So, and as I said, most of our actions are probably non-moral. They are involving any moral or morality. So that is what the first paragraph, children. The next paragraph, that is second paragraph. A moral act must be our own act, must spring from our own will. Listen, children, carefully. A moral act must be our own act, must spring from our own will. It should not be invoked or encouraged by others. If we act mechanically, there is no moral content in our act. Such an action would be moral if we think it proper to act like a machine and do so. So far, in doing so, we use our discrimination. We should bear in mind the distinction between acting mechanically and acting intentionally. So, acting mechanically without any purpose or consciousness, acting with intentionally with a moral one. It may be a moral of a king to pardon a culprit, but the messenger bearing the order of pardon plays only a mechanical part in the king's moral act. But if the messenger were to bear the king's order, considering it to be his duty, his actions would be a moral one. That is because he is following the king advice, king's words. How can a man understand morality who does not use his own intelligence and power of thought, but lets himself be swept along like a log of wood by a current? Sometimes a man defies convention and acts on his own with a view to doing absolute good. Such a great hero was Wendell Phillips. Here it is one address was giving, addressing an assembly of people. He once said, "Till you learn to form your own opinions and express them, I do not care much what you think of me." Thus, when we all care only for our conscience says, then alone can we be regarded to have stepped onto the moral road. We shall not reach at this stage as long as we do not believe and experience the belief that God within us, the God of all, is the ever-present witness to all our acts. So, here's some of the information given. Let's go on to the next paragraph, third paragraph, children. So, it is not enough that an act done by us is in itself good. It should have been done with the intention of to do good. That is to say, whether an act is moral or otherwise depends upon the intention of the doer. Two men may have done exactly the same thing, but the act of one may be moral and that of the other the contrary. This may not be the moral. So, take for instance a man who out of great pity feeds the poor, and another who does the same but with the motive of winning prestige or with some such a selfish end, though the action is the same. The act of one is moral and that of the other is non-moral, children. So, feeding a poor man without any intention of getting a profit, that is on great pity feeding the poor is a moral one, whereas the other one who is going to feed the poor with winning the prestige or with some such selfish end is not a moral one, children. So let's stop here up to this line, that is the act of feeding the poor by two men. One is moral and another one will be not a moral. So the remaining will continue in the next period, children. Thank you for listening. Take care, children.